Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something pretty delicious today. Wine and chocolate pairings. We got a really interesting article you guys sent in
Oh, yeah.
from Wine Maps. It's called The Sweet Symphony, Pairing Wine and Chocolate.
Okay.
So let's see what we can uncover.
Lots of folks think this is simple.
Right.
Just any red, any chocolate.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling this is going to get a little more in depth.
Yeah, this article kicks off by talking about the balance that you need to find. What do they mean by that?
It's matching the intensity of your chocolate with the body and the sweetness of the wine.
Okay.
So you don't want one to just kind of steamroll the other. You want them to both be able to shine.
I like that. Harmony.
Yes.
Deliciousness. So let's get specific.
Okay.
The article starts with pairings for milk chocolate.
Okay.
And the first one they recommend is port, which I wouldn't immediately think of. So what makes that work so well?
Well, port, especially like a tawny or a ruby port, has this fortified sweetness and rich fruit flavors that play really well with that creaminess of milk chocolate.
Now, the article mentions that tawny ports are aged in wooden barrels for years.
Yes.
Does that play into the pairing, too?
For sure. So that aging process creates those nutty oxidative notes, right? Which actually enhance those subtle caramel notes you get on a lot of milk chocolate.
Interesting. Okay.
It's beautiful.
Then there's Pinot Noir.
Yes.
Now, wouldn't the acidity in the Pinot Noir clash with the sweetness of the chocolate?
So this is where that contrast comes in.
Okay.
Pinot Noir is lighter bodied, and it has these bright cherry and raspberry notes that actually act as a refreshing counterpoint to that richness.
Okay.
So the acidity cuts through the sweetness and keeps it from being too cloying.
So it's not just matching sweet with sweet.
No.
There's more to it.
Definitely more to it.
They also mentioned Moscato Gasti.
Yes.
Which I feel like
classic.
is a classic pairing.
Yeah, for good reason. It's that light fizz and the sweetness that just complements that smooth, creamy nature of milk chocolate.
Yes.
Perfectly. It's just a fun pairing.
So we've covered 3 very different wines that work with milk chocolate in their own way.
It's fascinating.
It is. All right, so moving on to dark chocolate.
Okay.
The article starts with 50 to 70% cacao.
All right.
And they recommend Zinfandel.
Ooh.
Which is really interesting to me. I love Zinfandels.
Yes.
Those jammy fruit-forward reds.
Uh-huh.
But I wouldn't have thought of that with chocolate.
Well, Zinfandel is bold, and that's why it works.
Okay.
So that jammy fruitiness, sometimes you get a little peppery spice.
Yes.
They can stand up to that increasing bitterness and complexity you get as those chocolates get darker.
Okay.
They complement each other well.
So as we get into these darker chocolates,
yes,
we're looking for wines that have
a little bit more to them.
Yeah, more intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also recommend Merlot.
And late harvest Riesling.
Oh.
I'm curious about those two.
Well, Merlot, it has softer tannins and lots of fruit flavors.
Okay.
So it's a more gentle approach.
Yeah.
It won't clash with that richness.
Okay.
So if you want something that's a little smoother, less intense, Merlot's a good choice.
Late harvest Riesling.
Oh, late harvest Riesling is so interesting.
Yeah.
So it has this captivating balance of sweetness and acidity.
Right.
And that acidity is key.
Okay.
It helps cut through the richness of that chocolate.
Okay.
So you get the sweet, you get the tartness, you get the bitterness from the chocolate.
Okay, so as the chocolate gets more intense,
yes,
the wine needs to as well.
Needs more structure, needs more complexity.
What about when we get to like 70% cacao or higher?
Ooh.
That's like
serious chocolate.
Serious dark chocolate.
That's where we bring in the heavy hitters of the wine world.
Okay.
So something like a Cabernet Sauvignon is a classic pairing.
Okay.
That range.
Because it has tannins.
Yes.
Which I'm not sure everyone knows what that means.
So if you think about tannins, think about that drying sensation you get from like a black tea.
Okay.
So it gives the wine structure. It can feel astringent, but in a red wine like a Cabernet Sauvignon, it works really well to counterbalance the bitterness and intensity of that dark chocolate.
Okay.
Neither one dominates. They just elevate each other.
Adding that to my to-do list for tonight.
Do it.
What other wines would fit that bill?
You could also do a Syrah or a Shiraz.
Yeah.
It's got those bold, dark fruit flavors, sometimes even peppery notes.
Oh, yeah.
Which go beautifully with dark chocolate. And then there's Vintage Port. Vintage Port is in a class of its own.
Ooh.
It's got those concentrated fruit flavors, powerful tannins, and often a touch of sweetness.
Wow.
So it really is a luxurious experience with those really dark chocolates.
That sounds decadent. Okay, so we've talked about milk chocolate. We talked about dark chocolate.
Uh-huh.
What about white chocolate?
Yes.
because the article points out it's not technically true chocolate.
Right.
Because it doesn't have cacao solids.
It doesn't have the cacao solids.
So how did that change things?
Well, white chocolate is all about creamy sweetness and delicate flavors.
Yeah.
So we have to choose wines that complement those
Right.
without overpowering them.
They start off by recommending ice wine.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I've had ice wine.
Yes.
And it's very sweet, very flavorful.
Very intense.
I would have thought it.
So it's a surprising pairing.
Yeah.
But it really does work because that intense sweetness and the high acidity in ice wine really balances out that richness of white chocolate.
So we're seeing acidity is really important.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about the sweeter chocolates.
Acidity is key.
What about the other recommendations they have? They mentioned Moscato and sparkling rosé.
Well, Moscato, with its natural sweetness and those delicate floral notes you often find, is a natural pairing for white chocolate. It really enhances that existing sweetness without being too much.
Yeah.
And adds a nice little aromatic complexity.
And sparkling rosé always feels...
Sorbitory.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
So sparkling rosé brings a little bit of fruitiness and that effervescence. And those bubbles cut through the richness of the white chocolate.
Okay.
So it doesn't feel too heavy on your palate.
Okay, so we covered the basics. Milk, dark white chocolate.
We've got the foundation.
But the article doesn't stop there. They encourage us to go beyond just those categories.
Yes.
And explore flavored chocolate.
Now we're talking.
This is where I get excited.
Yes. This is where it gets really fun.
Because now we can get into chocolates with nuts or spices or fruit.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever tried pairings like that?
All the time. One of my favorites is almond chocolate with an Amontillado sherry.
Okay. Why does that work?
So Amontillado sherry has this amazing nutty character that comes from the aging process.
Right.
And that nuttiness goes so well with the almond and the chocolate.
It just makes sense.
Yes.
So you're kind of playing with those specific notes. What about spicy chocolate?
Ooh.
That feels tricky to pair.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember how we were saying Zinfandel is a good match for dark chocolate?
Yeah, because of those pepper notes.
Right. So if you take a chili-infused dark chocolate, that heat from the chili and that spice from the Zinfandel,
oh, wow,
it all just plays together beautifully.
Oh, that's amazing. So any flavor that's in the chocolate, we can play off of that.
Exactly.
They give the example of like raspberry chocolate with a Beaujolais.
Oh, nice.
I was just thinking like a citrus chocolate with a Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, yeah.
So many options.
And possibilities are pretty much endless.
And this is where it really becomes subjective.
Absolutely.
Because the article stresses there is no best pairing.
That's right. You know, we all have different palates.
Right.
What might be amazing to me might not be your cup of tea.
Exactly. So it's really about finding what you enjoy.
It is. You know, this whole deep dive is about giving you the knowledge and the confidence to explore and discover what you like.
I think that's a really important point to make.
It is important.
And to do that, you need to have good quality ingredients.
For sure.
The article really stresses that the quality of both the wine and the chocolate are going to affect your experience.
You got to have high quality chocolate with a high cacao percentage for it to really shine.
You're not going to pair like a fine wine with a Hershey's bar.
Exactly.
Right.
You want something.
You want those layers of complexity.
Or you're going to play well together.
So I think we've given our listeners a really good foundation.
I think we have.
We've talked about the basics of pairing. We dove into specifics.
Yes.
And we even touched on the flavored chocolates.
And how subjective it all is.
But the article got me thinking about something they didn't explicitly mention.
Oh.
Which is the regional variation in chocolate and how that might affect things.
Okay.
So you're talking about how chocolates from different parts of the world will have different flavor profiles.
Different flavor profiles.
Right.
Even with the same cacao percentage, depending on where it comes from, it's going to taste different.
Yeah. And they're specifically talking about single origin chocolate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where those cacao beans are sourced from one specific region.
Yeah.
And that region is going to have very specific characteristics.
Right.
Based on the soil and the climate and the traditions of that place.
Wow.
And those nuances can have a big impact on how they pair with wine.
So now the origin of the chocolate is important.
Very much so.
It's not just the type. Wow. Okay, so this is a whole other world to explore. So dear listener, if you're feeling adventurous,
yes,
think about those regional variations.
Yeah.
Find those single origin chocolates. See how those taste different.
Yes.
And then see how those pair with different wines.
It's going to be a journey.
It is going to be a journey.
A delicious one.
You know what I think the perfect way to do this?
Okay.
Is have a wine and chocolate tasting party.
Oh, that's a great idea. Get some friends together, get some different chocolates.
Yeah.
Open some bottles.
Yeah. And experiment.
Experiment. It's so much fun.
You might find your own signature pairing.
Exactly.